How's it going, boys? Today we're doing a little bit of a different video. A video that has to be done because, well, Historic is a very nice format and it's a very fun format. But considering Wizards is Wizards and they simply put do not care about their game, they are treating some cards that they should not be banned, even though everyone knows they should 100% be banned. Is this a useful video? No. Because it doesn't matter if this video gets all the attention of the world, if people completely agree with it or completely disagree with it, Wizards will never ban cards en masse. Because you need to understand how the human works in general. Wizards is using overpowered broken cards to force people to buy packs. Wizards can control 100% everything about what happens you in matchmaking. What opponent you get, what your opening hand is, what your ending hand is, what your opponent's hand is. Hey, they can even most likely control what you get when you open a pack. So, considering they can do all of that, they are never gonna ban the most overpowered cards in Magic, because simply put, people will buy cards because of this. People will buy a lot of packs because of this. You see, Wizards can force you to play against a Goblin deck for 200 games in a row, or you can see 0 Goblin decks in a row. And when you make a deck that's pretty decent, you get like 4 or 5 wins in a row, well, you play against a Goblin deck. And, well, not essentially a Goblin deck, but if you don't have a lot of cards, you're most likely playing a deck that can be easily recognized, that is a staple of Historic, for example, a Goblin deck, an Elf deck, an Ulamog / Ugin deck, or some kind of graveyard decks, and then Mizzet's Mastery deck or whatever. You're gonna play against that, so you lose against that. And the moment you start losing against that, you queue against that again, time passes, you know what the deck is, and now you want to play that deck also because the deck is just so damn strong, and you want to try it out for yourself. This is a strategy Wizards uses to sell packs. And it's a pretty damn good one. Otherwise, let's face it, they would have banned a lot of cards. A lot of cards way ago. But instead they're just, adding more and more completely broken cards because they just understand how broken they are. And that will force people to do some, things. So, this is a video about these broken cards. Why they should be banned, what kind of problems they create, and why people hate them. So let's start with the 3 most common perpetrators when it comes to please ban these cards. Goblin decks, Elf decks, and colorless decks, Ugin / Ulamog decks essentially. So if you do not know this, every tribal in Historic is more or less overstated, and their quality is dependent on what they are overstated on. For example, Goblin decks, Muxus decks, are literally the poster childs of the most consistent turn 5 OTK style of deck that you can play. You can get Muxus on turn 3 if you're really lucky, but on average you're gonna be playing your Muxus on like turn 4 or turn 5-ish. And Muxus by itself is a single win card. Muxus does not need anything else to combo with but himself to win. As long as you have goblins in your deck and as long as they're even remotely not all one drop trashes, Muxus is gonna single-handedly win you the game. The overstatedness of goblins comes into play, the fact that they have haste on almost everything, and they have a lot of things that makes goblins stronger, create free mana generation, or create token generation up to wazoo. And Muxus obviously takes a complete hold of that. When your deck already has defaultly good cards by themselves, but they mix and Muxus just allows you to play every single one of them, it's just too overpowered. The only thing that counters a Muxus is most likely a counterspell. Or you need to hope if you have just a removal spell that's on instant speed that someone plays a Muxus and they get only 1 goblin with a haste effect. But there are 2 goblins with haste effects and reduction effects and so on and so on. Essentially, Goblins are just overstacked, and Muxus is a instantaneous win condition that usually can easily be played on turn 5 on average. Turn 3 if you're really lucky, turn 4 is pretty decent, but Muxus is probably the most consistent turn 5 win deck that can win even on turn 3 and 4. So yeah, Muxus, obviously extremely problematic. But Wizards will not ban it, because, well, it's pretty much the best card in the whole set. And then we have Krenko. Krenko is also problematic, because there's a lot of goblins that synergize extremely good with Krenko. Krenko can win the game on his own on turn 4, and then obviously you have a card that can win the game on turn 4, and a card that also can win a game on turn 4, you have doubled your chances of glory. Turn 1, you drop a 1-drop. Turn 2, you drop a 2-drop. Turn 3, well, you drop something that gives other goblins haste. Turn 4, you drop Krenko. Congratulations, here's something like 5 free goblins, essentially, which is easily possible with Krenko on drop. And chances are, you have made those goblins into 2/2s now. So that's 10 damage instantaneously in an aggro deck, which means Krenko Mob Boss is winning on turn 4. Yeah, a little bit overpowered, I know. There's a huge amount of synergy, but honestly that synergy is quite fine to a degree. It's currently not overstacked. It's just the fact that cards like Krenko and Muxus do too much with the synergy. Well, that's pretty much it about Goblin decks. It's kind of easy. It's just, mostly it's just overstacked effects. Well, admittedly, it's not overstacked effects. Any card that has a potential to win solo just by being cast is overpowered and a bad game design and should be removed from the game to make the game, well, just more appeasing in the long term. Elf decks obviously suffer from the same problem. Elf decks are a tribal deck, so, you know, it's gonna suffer from the same problem. Currently, you can make a full elf deck of elves that only consist of one of two effects. One effect, it gives you mana, and in the best cases, it gives you a lot of mana for creatures. The second effect is that every elf gets stronger. Yeah, if that was not already honestly good enough, considering, you know, a turn 3 Elvish Archdruid can easily turn into like 7 or 8 mana on turn 4. Same thing with a Circle of Dreams Druid. You know, if that was not good enough on its own, well, it's the simple fact that, well, it's +1/1, and elves have stupid effects. You see, elves for some reason not only give a lot of mana and increase the power of creatures, but elves for some reason also have the most ridiculously overpowered creature effects that you can get. For example, here is an Elder Shepherd. This is a 1/1 that costs 1, which already makes it extremely overpowered for elves, because most elf decks really enjoy it when there's a good 1-drop to drop, even if it doesn't create mana. But this card, for only 6 mana, keep in mind, 6 mana is something you can have on turn 3 with an elf deck, can make everything into a 5/5 base toughness creature. Which is obviously insanely powerful, considering you can prog this effect on turn 3. And obviously elves have a little bit more effects like that. For example, the Elvish, whatever it's called, the 2-drop, that creates a 1/1 whenever another elf is dropped, and it gives +2/2 and Death Touch. These cards are seemingly balanced by the fact that they cost like 7 or 5 or 6 mana to activate, but again, keep in mind, 6-7 mana is your average available mana on turn 3 or 4 for an elf deck without any problems. So yeah, everything scales just too much. There's too much mana scaling, and there's too much things to do with said mana. For example, alias our shepherds. So, you know, you remove the shepherds, you absolutely 100% remove any card that even resembles anything close to an Elvish Archdruid. You know, essentially remove everything that has more than one line of text again. But, you know, for an Arc Druid or a Circle of Dreams Druid, the fact that it can just give you like 5 mana on its own on turn 4 is, or on turn 3, is a little bit, needless to say, extremely overstacked. And this empowers like turn 4 OTKs and things like that. Then we have the Ugin / Ulamog decks. Ulamog is a little bit less used, well, a lot less used. But Ugin is 100% a card that infuriates almost everyone in the game. You can make a deck as shitty as you honestly want, but as long as you have included Ugin, the Spirit Dragon, in your deck, congratulations, it's a tier 1 deck. Unless Ugin gets countered, Ugin is a get out of jail free card for every and any situation in Magic. Unless you're gonna lose to an instant or a sorcery spell, no. Ugin just simply says not today and gets rid of almost anything. Ugin can get rid of hinges or whatnot, but you know, hinge on itself is not the great win condition for most of the time. You know, and it's very rare that Ugin can't instantaneously get rid of something. So, Ugin usually -5s, let's say. He has still 2 loyalty points left, and his plus is a +2. So, next time you drop something, it needs to be above 3 toughness, or it gets instantaneously removed by Ugin, and it cannot be multiple cards that are less than whatever loyalty he has left, because then he can just -2 again, and well, 1 card dealt with your board 2 full times, which is definitely not healthy game design. Cards like Ugin are overpowered because they are 8 mana cost, but they honestly could be like 15 or 20 mana. They would still be way stronger than it should be, presumable. Okay, with 15 or 20 mana, no one's gonna play it. But if Ugin costs 10 mana, people would still play it. I can guarantee you. If you bumped up Ugin the Spirit Dragon cost to like 10 or 11, people would still play it, because it would be literally worth it. Ulamog's Ceaseless Hunger. It's a really annoying card, and and the only way to honestly counter it is either win next turn when you win against it next turn, or exile. If you can't exile it, then you're just on a timer. Also, the fact that the Exile 2 permanence effect cannot be avoided unless you're using only 1 card, which is a blue card, which is probably never gonna happen. That's also a small problem in playing against an Ulamog. Ulamog's the least of the problems, but Ugin, oh god, Ugin is just hated by everyone universally. Plus, Wizards has Ugin's font broken for months now. In game, sometimes Ugin is like in a black bold format, so I don't know what's the deal there. Dragon Rage Channeler. Wizards does this thing where they just like to add new cards to make already strong decks stronger. So Dragon Rage Channeler is absolutely amazing in anything that is red burn related, or for example a Phoenix deck, or even just a casual graveyard deck. A 1 cost, a 1/1 that has Surveil. Yeah, let that sink in for a moment. It is absolutely insanely powerful, needless to say. Even if it didn't have any other effects, just the fact that it's a 1/1, the fact that it costs 1 mana and it is a red, aka a color that loves poking around in the graveyard, already makes it extremely strong. But the fact is, this thing also becomes a 3/3, but not any 3/3, a 3/3 with flying. Yes, for some reason they needed to add flying even on top, even though 1/1 becoming a 3/3 for 1 mana is already insanely powerful, because no matter what type of requirements you need to fill, it's most likely worth it. But you know, the Surveil for a 1/1 is just insane for a graveyard loving color. Then you have the things that empower graveyard play, which are insanely good. Most cards that have discard effects are extremely cost efficient. You have, for example, cards like Faithless Looting. Faithless Looting ditches 2 cards, draws 2 cards. It has absolutely no downside, and it's 1 mana. Not to mention, if you have nothing better to do, you can cast it on turn 3 and do it again. Even for 3 mana, it's still a pretty decent effect. But then you have a lot more cards. You have plenty of 2 mana cost cards that will draw you 3 cards, and you need to discard 2 cards. AKA, it is extremely easy to be a graveyard deck that by turn 4 has already put in like roughly 15 cards in the graveyard or so. It is extremely easy to achieve that. And graveyard decks are very, very overstacked because of it. But I would say that the drawing cards are not the problem. Sure, they are really good, but what is the problem is the fact that you have things, cards like, for example, Unburied Rites. This card doesn't even need to be in your hand. This card can easily be discarded and then played on turn 4. And its effect is, well, its effect is extremely powerful. If it was 5 mana, it would still be pretty decent, but we already have a lot of 5 mana cards that do the same effect. But its mana cost is pitiful. It only requires either a black or a white, and considering you want to ditch this card, you don't even have to put in black in the deck anyway, because chances are, if you made a decent discard deck, you're gonna have the one white in it to play it anyway, so you don't ever need to keep it in the hand. So this is an instant turn 4 win condition most of the time because it can resurrect absolutely everything. Faithless Looting, 1 mana, discard 2 cards, draw 2 cards, way, way, way too powerful. Even the 2 cost, this draw 3, discard 2 cards is way too powerful, but this is a 1/1, so that's just bad game design at all. 1-drops that are overstacked with text should never exist at all. Like, I honestly don't think there are legitimately almost any good 1/1-drops that people use that aren't overpowered. Opt may be something that's not necessarily overpowered. But, you know, it's hard to imagine a good, decent 1-drop that is not overpowered, and that's why people don't use it. Faithless Looting clearly just skeets over absolutely any barrier of entry that should have ever been put on the deck. It just flat out does not care because it's just so goddamn powerful. And there's no reason for it. It just empowers bad decks, instant decks. Like, all the decks that I'm currently talking about essentially are more or less decks that don't even have any interaction with your opponent. You're just playing your own game and hoping for a turn 3 or 4 OTK style of win. And that is the same what Faithless Looting does. Only thing with graveyard decks is they're a little bit worse than, well, worse in as in more annoying. Because when you're drawing like 3 to 5 cards per turn, starting from turn 1, it is impossible to miss land drops, it's impossible to miss good draws. So essentially graveyard decks, because of the absolute draw power they have and the fact that they want things in the graveyard, kinda are a self-fulfilling prophecy of power. So, you know, all cards that empower graveyard play too easily are completely broken. Like, these are the 2 main cards I would ban to reduce graveyard play, but, you know, there are other problematic things. Like, for example, Priest of Fell Rites. Anything that searches the graveyard and gets something out of the graveyard and has a mana cost of, well, less than 5 is completely insane. Priest of Fell Rites. If you did not know, then, well, I have a dinosaur deck, and it's essentially we get around 20 mana of value on turn 3 with a dinosaur deck. Priest of Fell Rites and plus Faithless Looting is the way to empower that strategy, by the way. And again, effects like Unearth should not exist in the game. You should not have such powerful effects on cards that already have powerful effects. Like, I don't care if you have a resurrection effect, as long as that card does absolutely nothing but hits face without haste. A card can have a resurrection like that by me, that's absolutely fine. But it needs to be a decent mana cost, and it needs to, not have haste or anything like that. It just needs to be a beat stick, and then it's fine. Thief Guild's Enforcer, just another casual overstacked 1-1. The main problem with Thief Guild's Enforcer is the fact that the way arena is structured. Some decks will definitely 100% get some cards in the opening hands. For example, I no longer remember the statistics because I stopped keeping them, but rogue decks, I don't remember. Maybe someone remembers, but I kept tabs on this openings of rogue decks. Out of 20 games, like 17 openers were a Ruin Crab on turn 1. And a rogue deck will on average have 4 out of 7 cards in its opening hand will be a mix of Ruin Crab, Thief Guild's Enforcers plus Drown and Lock. And considering that's the opening hand, Thief Guild's Enforcer is pretty overpowered because it empowers a 2-cost counterspell / removal spell that has absolutely no downsides. Usually Drown and Lock's downside is the fact that you need to mill some cards to do it, but considering how rogue decks work in general, it is impossible to be hindered by anything. So yeah, Thieves Guild Enforcer, it either mills or it hits face. Thief Guild's Enforcer, essentially, the moment it comes on the field, it becomes a 3-2 with Death Touch. That's insane. Not to mention, it has Flash. That's insane. Plus, it mills cards. That's insane. It has a lot of effects. Again, it's just clearly an overstacked card for no reason. So yeah, Thief Guild's Enforcer should probably be banned. You can say Ruin Crab is obviously bad also, but Ruin Crab has only one effect. It mills 3 cards. It doesn't do anything else. But Thieves Guild Enforcer is an extremely strong opener, mid-game, late-game card. It can mill the deck as easily as it can hit the face, so you lose to aggro. Then we have things like Collective Company. 1 green, 4 cost, 2 cards, look at 6. Essentially, it's almost impossible if you have a decent creature deck to miss an extremely powerful play. And considering a lot of cards are very easy comboable in this game, well, Collective Company is like, well, if you're playing against the control deck and the control deck wipes you, that is most likely the control base only real way to have a chance of winning against the creature deck. Collective Company serves only one reason, and that reason is to counteract the idea that a control deck can wipe the board and hope to win a game. Collective Company will be just used at the end of your opponent's turn, and then it's swing it to win it, most of the time. Mizzet's Mastery. Mizzet's Mastery is completely overpowered. Again, you have so many cards that just, put things in the graveyard for no cost. And Mizzet's Mastery can play anything. Most of the time, Mizzet's Mastery is played with, things like Triumphant Reckoning. And what's the dragon one called, where you can just combo dragons into infinity? Zenite Flare. Zenite Flare is also one of those decks I kept tabs on, and we had like 40 games of records. First Zenite Flare will be close to your top 5 cards, and the second Zenite Flare will be almost always, when I mean almost always, 60% of the time on the 21st draw. And if it's not there, 80% chance it will be anywhere between the 23rd, 24th, or 25th draw. Essentially, that's how they balance Zenite Flare decks out. Because cycling decks are just flat out retarded. If there's at least somewhat of play and do something when it comes to playing an elf or goblin deck, well, cycling decks absolutely have none of that. Zenyte Flare, the only reason this is not like a tier 0 deck is the fact that wizards, 9 times out of 10, will limit the amount of Zenyte Flares you have in the opening hand and when you get them. So essentially you need to win the game by, well, the casual strategy will be, well, the only strategy. The only strategy with Zenyte's Flare is if you have one in the opening hand, which you will always have one in the opening hand. If you don't have it in the opening hand, have no fear, just essentially it will be in the next 2 cards, which is about the time when you actually slowly start to have a use for it. That's Zenyte Flare in a nutshell. Zenyte Flare decks are completely curated by the fact that, you know, you need to think about when to use it to win on your 21st, 22nd, 23rd draw. That's how far you're in the deck. So yeah, cycling decks are just absolutely dog shit stupid. Paradox Engine Dex. Paradox Engine Dex is a 5-cost card that creates infinity mana in too many easy ways possible. And Wizards curates Paradox Engines a lot. One of the most common to see top 10 Mythic decks that you saw time to time was cards like what's it called? Emery Engines, essentially, where you got Paradox Engine out on turn 5 the moment you... Well, it wasn't turn 5, it was like turn 3 or turn 4 or something like that on that turn, and then next turn you would instantaneously win because you can get infinity mana and infinity draw because Paradox Engine. Paradox Engine is what empowers it. Every other card just works around Paradox Engine. So Paradox Engine obviously needs to be banned for extremely simple reasons. It empowers infinity combo decks way too easily. Wizards knows it. Wizards curates it a lot. Previously, Wizards curated Paradox Engine decks, and a lot of decks, by the way, that relied on one card to win, by simply put not giving you one in the first 30 cards of the deck. After, you know, you had a chance to draw it. But, you know, if you had like 2 wins, 3 wins, or something like that, congratulations, all your Paradox Engines are literally the last 4 cards in your deck, and things like that. Now Wizards just flat out gives you Paradox Engine. They just give you an opponent that uses a deck like this, and well, you know, they went first and they won. Oh, by the way, that's also a funny little thing. Wizards will most likely never implement a way for players to go first on their own volition. For example, rock, paper, scissors style of things. Wizards will absolutely never implement anything like that because that would ruin their carefully crafted algorithm of forcing people to lose when they need to lose and forcing people to win when they need to win. Because every game's intention, every game's methodology, every game's endgame is the idea that they keep their players engaged as long as possible. And curating a person's win ratio is the easiest way, because people stop playing games when they win too much and when they lose too much. So you need a good mix of that. Bolas Citadel decks. Bolas Citadel is kind of a decent card, but there are honestly just too many easy ways to empower it. Bolas Citadel could not... It's not necessarily a ban because Bolas Citadel decks most of the time cannot skip the mana requirement for a Bolas Citadel to activate. And, you know, they can be bricked. It's not an instant win condition deck. But Bolas Citadel is just purely fucking stupid. And no one would be really too sad if it was gone. Embercleave. Embercleave is an instant win card. There's absolutely nothing you can do against it. If you go second and if your opponent is an aggro deck and they drop enough creatures, you are gonna be absolutely OTK'd on turn 3 and there's absolutely nothing you can do about it. Embercleave needs to be banned for that reason. I remember the horror times of Historic. Maybe you hadn't played then, but yeah. It was like, well, you're doing good. Congratulations. Here's a Red or Gruul aggro deck. What's this? That's Embercleave on turn 4. Instantaneous KO. Well, ain't that sad. Go play again. And, you know, and Blade Winged Risen is one of the easiest most classic examples of how little Wizards understands about their game. Well, they know that this card was a bad idea to put in Historic. It was only a matter of time until it creates a stupid combo where you can just insta-win. And, you know, most of those decks do admittedly involve Mizzet's Mastery, but, you know, this card is a poster child for what should never be done with a card. A card should never have any text that has anything to do with it comboing with itself. If you play one of these and you have one of these in the graveyard, you can essentially just shuffle them from the graveyard to the battlefield, from the battlefield to the graveyard in an infinity loop. A card should never have any infinity potential with itself or any synergy potential with itself. That's actually a huge deal that I don't like about what's it called? Where is it? The Cleric card, this one, Orach, the Skycleave Hippolyte. I don't like this card because it has too much synergy with itself. If you play this while it's on board, it honestly does far too much synergy, and I really don't like it. Any card that has synergy with itself or can have synergy with itself is inherently broken in my opinion. Then there are cards like, you know, honorable mentions, I would like to say. Honorable mentions like Triumphant Reckoning. Honestly, one of my favorite cards. It combos with Mizzet's Mastery to just win on turn 4, which is extremely easy with the color combination, what it can do, obviously. Scholar of the Lost Trove. It's no longer used that much, but it still can have extremely easy combos with things like Resurrection from Graveyards with Unburied Rites. Like, cards like this, yeah, sure, they're extremely powerful and whatnot, but as long as you don't have, like, stupid things like Unburied Rites to cheese them out on turn 4, it is more or less at least a decently balanced card. And there are a couple of people, I think, that are saying, well, you can just build it around your fact that some deck plays with the graveyard and blah, blah, blah. Put in some graveyard disruption. Okay, that's a stupid fucking thing to say for one extremely easy reason. If you have in your deck, let's say your deck is 60 cards big, and you have 4 cards that can deal with graveyard decks, you still need to draw that card. There's not exactly a great chance that you are drawing that card, while your opponent's whole deck is designed around the graveyard, and every turn it accomplishes what it needs to accomplish, while you are at the mercy of the draw. Do you get that one card that stifles your opponent's graveyard deck? And, well, a graveyard deck is always going to play a graveyard deck if it queues up to play with a graveyard deck. But your deck that has 4 cards that are good against graveyard decks can queue into other decks that are, surprise, surprise, not graveyard decks. So, essentially, by trying to counter a specific deck style, you are just making your own deck weaker in general. In this metasphere, it is a bad choice. It just makes your deck inherently weaker by default by trying to put specific cards that are good against specific decks. Because there's no guarantee that you're gonna play against those specific decks most of the time, unless that card can has a very good other effect. You know, Approach of the Second Sun, a lot of people hate this, but Approach of the Second Sun cannot be cheesed because of the way it works. And Approach of the Second Sun, well, if a control deck has 7 mana and it's casting Approach of the Second Sun, well, chances are you're either a creature deck, in which case, well, it's turn 7, and if you're against a control deck, 99.9% of the time you have lost at that point, or you're against a non-creature deck, which most likely has ways to deal with Approach of the Second Sun being cast. So, Second Sun is quite annoying if people get lucky and you get unlucky, but you know, it is good. Also, things like Soul Warden. Soul Warden is not necessarily overpowered on its own, but it's just the simple fact that Wizards, well, they completely rigged the game. I don't remember the last time I have ever played against a mono-white deck, a mono-white life gain deck, that does not start the game with a Soul Warden or Speaker of the Heavens. I have not played a single game in, I think, a year plus that does not have an opening of either Soul Warden or Speaker of the Heavens. You know, cards like this, they can just simply be fixed by the radical concept that Wizards no longer interferes with the opening hand and the rest of the game. So, you know, there's probably people who have more cards they would like to be banned, but I would say that these are the most problematic, because they are either too cheap, do too much, are just flat out too powerful, or they're too easy to combo, or they completely give, or they just single-handedly give a deck a win condition of its own. What are your thoughts on this? And this was Quizzer Sensei. Thanks for watching. Subscribe if you haven't already. Check out the channel, check out Discord, check out the Patreon, check out everything, and have a nice day. Bye-bye.